This Fender Vintera Jazzmaster is the guitar that I did not know I needed. One look at my guitar rack and it's pretty obvious that this is not my usual type of instrument, but there are a few reasons that it's definitely found its place there. What's up my dudes, I hope you're well. I'm Jack, and in this video I want to talk to you a little bit about this Vintera 60s Modified Jazzmaster by Fender that's been like a breath of fresh air for my playing. For those of you that know me, you're probably thinking, what the f*** are you doing with a Jazzmaster that's not a gym root? And you'd be absolutely right to think that. I'm a metal player, I like chugs, I like pinch harmonics, and this is probably the last thing you'd expect to see on this channel. As it happens though, I'm actually a big fan of this guitar overall, but there are a few things that I'm not too keen on. So the Jazzmaster shape is probably one of my favourite shapes of all time, and I think it's criminally underrated. This one is a whacking great chunk of alder finished in Fender's best colour, surf green. And on that massive body, you get a tortoiseshell pickguard loaded with some pretty interesting electronics. You've got a set of Fender Vintage 60s hot single coils specifically for the Jazzmaster, 3-way selector switch, 1 volume, 1 tone, and then this other stuff here is where it gets a little bit more jazzy. This switch and these rollers are to move between the lead and rhythm circuits that are housed in this pickguard. Now, I'm not a massive fan of the tortoiseshell guard if I'm being honest. I know it's vintage or whatever, but it's a taste that I've yet to acquire, like wine.
Sweet berry wine!
Anyway, the tortoiseshell definitely looks better on the sunburst option, but when I was choosing the colour of mine, my daughter was actually wearing a surf green baby grower, so I had to get this one. Next, there's the Adjustomatic bridge paired with the classic vintage style tremolo system and its long ass arm, and the neck is a maple modern C, modern not necessarily being a word that you'd attribute to this guitar straight away, with a 21 fret Palfero fingerboard that's got a 9.5 inch radius, synthetic bone nut and vintage style tuners. So it's as vintage as it gets really, but there are some hints here that Fender haven't made this guitar without thinking about us, like the more modern player. The modern scene neck profile is the first clue, and granted, it's not really that modern, but it's definitely not a boat paddle, and it's finished in satin and not gloss. Then there's the fact that these Jazzmaster pickups are hotter than what you'd usually find on a 60s style Jazzmaster. It's built really well too. This guitar is actually heavy as shit, which I really like, and it's super solid. The neck joint is really snug, and there's actually nothing about it that's messy in terms of construction. The only two minor issues I had when I received this guitar was the fact that the fretboard was the driest piece of wood in the world and the frets needed a decent polishing. When I hydrated the board, I swear it must have drunk about 3 pints of hydrator, but like in terms of the appearance and design, I just wish it didn't have a front facing output jack. I could get a right angled lead just for this guitar, but then it wouldn't work as well with my others and seems a bit daft. It's the same with SGs mostly too, and it's just a bit rubbish, innit? They get in the way, they block the trem arm. I just think it's about time we banned them. But let's talk about playability and dig a little bit further into why I got this guitar in the first place. As soon as you put your hands on it, you know where you're at, because like, this is the most Fendery Fender guitar to exist. It sits on the body beautifully, it's so well balanced, and the neck feels incredible, especially with the satin finish. It makes me wonder why the Jazzmaster's never seen as much success as the Strat or Telly, because having tried this one, if I was looking for a Fender guitar, this has just got the vibe in buckets, man. Now the reason that I got this particular guitar is because I was looking for something that would force me to play a bit differently. My RGs have barely been out of my hands recently, but although I am a metal player, I do actually like different things too. I know, it's a crazy idea innit, a metal player that doesn't always want to play metal. I'm joking of course, I know there's plenty of us who like a variety of different types of music, but my hope with this guitar was that it was going to be something to help me work on different techniques and sounds, chordal playing and cleans and that sort of thing. I personally love lo-fi and chill-out music, and I want to write some alongside the more guitar-centric instrumental stuff I've been working on. Anyway, the 9.5 inch radius of this neck is so different to my other guitars, it just lends itself to it perfectly. It's so easy to just grab a chord chord and move around the neck that it's obvious that that's what this guitar was built for. And the inclusion of this tremolo is just an awesome thing, dude. Like I said before, this is my first Jazzmaster, so it's my first experience with a Jazzmaster trem, and like the wavy, airy vibrato that it gives is just so sweet. Also, a small but interesting thing that I've found, you know how you get different tones depending on where you pick, whether it's closer to the bridge or like further up the neck. If you're strumming whilst you're holding this trem, it automatically puts my pick above the neck pickup and gives like a really rich response. I doubt that was ever intended or thought about, but it is really cool for those clean chords. And quickly, if you're enjoying the video or you found it helpful so far, don't forget to feed a like to the YouTube algo so it knows you're having a good time. Cheers, dude. Now, I know there were a lot of complaints about this guitar holding tune, mainly because of the trem system. That was actually the big warning that I got firsthand from someone who really knows what they're talking about. So far, touch wood, I've not had a problem with mine, but I can see how that could happen. The vintage tuners in particular make it difficult to minimise windings because you have to cut the string to length before you wind. So if you're not precise with your string lengths, then you get windings for days like I've got. If the nuts cut poorly as well, then that could cause hang-ups when you're using the trem. The strings could also catch on the bridge saddles. There's a lot that could cause tuning problems with this guitar. That said, I'm really happy with the tuning stability on this, and I've been faffing with this trem loads. Although, I don't like these tuners. I stabbed myself twice while I was restringing this guitar and drew blood. Am I dumb? Yes, that's no secret. Would it have happened with a guitar that had got regular or locking tuners on it? Probably not, although I wouldn't put it past myself. Next, this guitar is very long, as you can see. The body is massive and it's a 25.5-inch scale length, so the bridge comes forward further than I'm used to, and that's taken a bit of adjustment. I still find myself naturally resting my right hand on the excess strings behind the bridge, and because there's strings there, it doesn't actually feel wrong. Sometimes it takes a moment to realise, and it's a very weird experience when it does happen, so that's something to bear in mind. Though it doesn't make this guitar any less playable. The highlights in terms of playability for me are the comfort of the neck and the body. People always say Leo got it right the first time or the second time, but no one ever talks about just how right he got it with the Jazzmaster. This is far more comfortable than any Telecaster I've ever played, and in my opinion, I reckon it looks better too. So what sort of sounds can you get from the hot Jazzmaster single coils? Well, they're not really that hot, but they're not made for that sort of thing, so they don't need to be scorching. They can tackle anything up to and including a pretty crunchy rock tone, and they'd probably do well in an alt rock environment as well. Something where you're really digging in and hitting the guitar hard to compensate for the lack of output, but I wouldn't really use them for anything above that personally. Where they really shine though is the cleans. The crisp clarity of the tone this guitar produces when it's cleaned up is just superb, dude. And when you start piling on the reverbs and the delays, the tone just expands and comes to life. This guitar will most definitely be my go-to ambient tone machine for tracking wide sounding chord sections and like jangly lo-fi riffs. And while we're on the topic of chords and stuff, let's go over the rhythm section and talk about what it adds, or should I say takes away from the guitar. Flicking this switch here engages the rhythm circuit, which singles out the neck pickup and runs the signal through a capacitor, which is like the equivalent of having your tone knob on 0 to 2, and that's the only range you've got. The idea originally was that jazz musicians would like vamp on a chord section on the rhythm circuit and then engage the lead circuit when they wanted to step out on a solo. The only problem there is that jazz musicians never really adopted the Jazzmaster, but like in a time now where people love lo-fi and neo-soul, I can see this rhythm circuit actually having some merit. I've said before that I'm all about guitarists having more options, so it's awesome to have it there, but it's probably something that I'll never use. But this guitar is no slouch in lead mode either. The bridge single coil on this is far more usable than any other bridge single coil I've ever used on a Strat, and the neck pickup is just absolutely awesome, dude. Overall, I like the way this guitar sounds a lot, and for what I'm going to use it for, it fits the bill perfectly, although it does leave me wanting a little bit more. The pickups are a little bit weak for my taste, but I think there's something coming up within the next month or so that'll give me exactly what I need. I'll have to keep you posted. Anyway, enough of me trying to tell you what it sounds like. Here are some examples, and there's going to be effects on these because nobody wants to listen to a dry, clean tone. So I like this guitar a lot. The Jazzmaster really deserves more respect on its name, and I think it sucks that the Strat and the Telly got all the glory when this thing's got so much to offer. Now I don't want this video to come across as like
metal guitarist buys a vintage inspired guitar and then moans about it being vintage,
because I did know what I was buying. That said, it is some of the vintage stuff that I don't really like, but some of it I absolutely do. The stylings of this guitar are awesome, it looks absolutely great, and I particularly love the trem system. Spicy take? Maybe it is, yeah, but it does exactly what I wanted it to do. However, the tuners are a bit fiddly, the front facing output jack absolutely sucks, and the vintage pickups might have been hot for the 60s, but they're just mild now. As I hope you can tell though, the problems that I've got with this guitar don't make me like it any less. They're things that I can choose to live with or change if I want to, but the features on this guitar might be exactly what you want. Who knows? The overwhelming positive that I've got from this guitar is that it has inspired me to play differently. I can't just drop tune this thing and then blast out some riffs like I would on my other more played guitars. It actually makes me think about the aspects of my playing that I want to work on and incentivizes me to do that because it makes it all sound so good. Don't worry though, I'm not turning into a jazz man. It's just rewarding for me to be expanding my playing a little bit, and that can only be a good thing. And so we've reached the part of the video where it's obvious we're nearly at the end and people start to click off to watch another video. If that's you, I really appreciate you watching and I hope this helped. Enjoy your next video and I'll see you in a bit. But if you're one of the legends that watches right to the very end, you're the real MVPs. I couldn't do this without the support and positivity from people like you, and the fact that you continue to watch and enjoy this idiot's videos means a huge amount to me. Honestly, thank you. To join the 100% club, comment jazz me up below so that I get to know who you are. If you aren't a subscriber yet, I would love to have you around, and don't forget to feed the YouTube algo a like for me. As always dudes, I appreciate you. Take care, stay safe. I'll see you later.